Welcome to True Crime Case Files. In this episode, we explore a twisted love triangle that ended in a tragic death in one of America's safest cities. This is the story of Sarah Miller, a compassionate nurse, loving wife, and mother whose life was cruelly cut short, a victim of a twisted love triangle. It was a calm, sunny morning in Roseville, California on March 15, 2021. Around 7:30 a.m., David Miller, Sarah's husband, called 911 in a panic. "I found my wife unresponsive," he shouted into the phone. The operator tried to keep him calm as she dispatched emergency services to their home in a quiet suburban neighborhood known for its safety and friendly community. David claimed he had just returned from his regular early morning jog. When David entered the house, everything seemed normal at first. The smell of coffee from the kitchen lingered in the air, and the kids' toys were scattered around, a usual sight in the Miller household. But as David walked upstairs to their bedroom, he knew something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. When he pushed it open, he found Sarah lying on the floor near their bed, a pair of panties tied around her neck. She wasn't moving. David rushed to her side, trying to wake her up, but she was unresponsive. He quickly checked for a pulse and, finding none, grabbed his phone to call for help. The Roseville Fire Department and police arrived at the scene within minutes. Roseville is known for its prompt emergency response, and this day was no different. Paramedics rushed upstairs, but soon confirmed the worst. Sarah Miller was dead. David was inconsolable, pacing back and forth in the living room, his hands shaking. He kept muttering, "How could this happen?" over and over. Neighbors soon gathered outside the Miller home, drawn by the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles. News spread quickly in the close-knit community, and by mid-morning, local reporters from the Roseville Press-Tribune and even Sacramento's KCRA3 were on the scene, looking for details about what had happened in one of the city's most peaceful neighborhoods. David, now a suspect, was taken to the police station for questioning. His tear-streaked face and trembling hands made it clear he was in shock. But for the police, this was just the beginning of a complex and tragic investigation into the life and death of Sarah Miller. Sarah Miller was 37 years old and worked as a nurse at Sutter Roseville Medical Center. She was known for her compassionate and dedicated nature, always putting her patients first. Sarah lived in a charming two-story house in Roseville with her husband, David, and their two children, Mitt, aged 8, and Catcher, aged 5. Sarah graduated from the University of California, Davis, with a degree in nursing. She was well-liked by her classmates and professors, who admired her dedication and drive. After college, she quickly found a job at Sutter Roseville, where she worked for over a decade. Her colleagues often said she had a special way with patients, always knowing how to comfort and care for them. She was the type of person who would drop everything to help someone in need. In her personal life, Sarah enjoyed simple pleasures. She loved gardening, and her backyard was filled with blooming flowers and plants. She also enjoyed cooking, often trying new recipes from her favorite cooking shows and food blogs. Her kids loved her homemade chocolate chip cookies, a recipe passed down from her grandmother. In the days leading up to her death, Sarah seemed happy and focused on her family and work. She had recently celebrated Mitt's birthday with a small family party. They had cake, played games, and even watched Mitt's favorite movie, The Hangover 2. Sarah had also been working extra shifts at the hospital, helping out during the COVID-19 pandemic. She was always willing to lend a hand, and her dedication did not go unnoticed by her supervisors. Sarah had dreams for the future. She talked about taking a family trip to France once things returned to normal. She also wanted to go back to school to specialize in pediatric nursing, a field she felt passionate about. Her friends and family knew her as a loving mother, a devoted wife, and a true friend. Sarah's tragic death left a huge void in the lives of those who knew and loved her. Her colleagues at the hospital were in shock, and her family was heartbroken. Sarah Miller's life was one of dedication, love, and kindness, and her loss was deeply felt by the Roseville community. The Roseville Police Department responded quickly to the 911 call from David Miller on March 15, 2021. They arrived at the Miller residence within minutes. Leading the investigation was Detective Laura Benedicto, a seasoned investigator known for her meticulous attention to detail. Detective Benedicto, along with her partner, Detective Julian Collins, began examining the scene. The Miller's home, located in a peaceful suburb, was now a crime scene. The bedroom where Sarah Miller was found was in disarray. Clothes were scattered on the floor, and the bed was unmade. A broken picture frame lay near Sarah's body, adding to the chaotic scene. Sarah had been strangled with her own panties, a detail that suggested a crime of passion. Detectives Benedicto and Collins began their investigation by collecting evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, collected DNA samples, and took numerous photographs of the scene. They also interviewed David Miller, who was visibly shaken and distraught. David claimed he had been out jogging and found Sarah when he returned. Despite his grief, detectives noted some inconsistencies in his account. The police brought in forensic experts to assist with the investigation. They used advanced tools and techniques to gather as much information as possible. Forensic scientists examined the broken picture frame and other items in the room for fingerprints and DNA. They also analyzed the Julians on Sarah's neck to determine the force and angle of the strangulation. Every detail was crucial in piecing together what had happened. Detective Benedicto spoke to the neighbors, who were shocked by the news. Roseville was known for its low crime rate, and something like this was almost unheard of. Neighbors reported seeing David go for his morning jog, as he usually did, but no one had seen anything suspicious. One neighbor mentioned hearing raised voices coming from the Miller house the night before, which added a new layer to the investigation. As the day went on, the police continued their work, carefully preserving the crime scene and gathering as much evidence as they could. Detective Benedicto and her team were determined to find out who was responsible for Sarah's death. They worked late into the night, reviewing the evidence and interviewing everyone who might have information. The crime scene was eventually cleared, but the investigation was far from over. Detective Benedicto knew that the key to solving the case lay in the details. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, could be the clue that cracked the case. The Roseville Police Department was committed to finding justice for Sarah Miller and bringing her killer to account. The first suspect in the investigation was David Miller, Sarah's husband. David was 40 years old and worked as a sales executive for a tech company in Sacramento. He was known for his charming and outgoing personality, making him successful in his career. However, behind closed doors, David had been unfaithful, engaging in multiple extramarital affairs. This detail quickly made him a person of interest in the case. David was brought to the police station for questioning. Detective Laura Benedicto and Detective Julian Collins led the interrogation. David appeared distraught and exhausted. He revealed that instead of jogging in Maydew Park at the time of Sarah's murder, which is what he told the 911 operator and police initially, he was actually having sex with his lover, Emile Rochefort, that morning. David explained that he often went to Emile for sex to clear his mind and deal with stress. Despite his apparent grief, detectives noticed inconsistencies in David's story. When asked about his relationship with Sarah, David described it as strained but loving. He admitted to his affairs, explaining that they were a way to cope with the pressures of work and family life. He seemed sincere, but the detectives were not convinced. During the interrogation, David was asked about his sexual relationship with Emile Rochefort, a 25-year-old personal trainer. David admitted to the affair, but insisted that Emile had nothing to do with Sarah's death. He claimed that Emile was his alibi, as they had been having sex on the morning of the murder. David's calm demeanor and detailed answers raised suspicions among the investigators. They found it odd that he could be so composed given the circumstances. To verify David's alibi, the police contacted Emile Rochefort. Emile confirmed that he and David had been together that morning, but his story also had some inconsistencies. This further complicated the investigation. Detectives Benedicto and Collins decided to dig deeper into David's personal life. They discovered text messages and emails that revealed the extent of his infidelity and his turbulent relationship with Sarah. Neighbors